This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. This is the podcast where we discuss marketing, business tips, and so many other cool tips to help assist you with your business journeys. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. And I'm joined with a very special guest today, AJ Wilcox. Hi, AJ.
Thanks so much for having me, Daniela. I'm so excited for this.
I'm so excited to have you as well. You've been a longtime friend of ours at Penji, and you are also the founder of B2Linked. So for anybody who is not familiar with what that is, with what you do, can you give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are?
Yeah, so this happened about 14 years ago. I went into a company as a search engine optimization specialist and a Google Ads guy, and ended up without any of my own choice in the matter. I kind of got thrown into advertising on LinkedIn. I didn't know anything about it. It ended up becoming the very best marketing channel for this company. I ended up growing it to become LinkedIn's largest spending ads account, 14 years ago. And after running that account for a few years, I went, there have to be more companies than just this one that would be successful on LinkedIn ads. And so just over 10 years ago, I started B2Linked, and we're an ad agency that LinkedIn ads is our deep specialty. It's all we do, and absolutely love it. Every element of LinkedIn advertising, it's what I live and breathe.
Amazing. I think what's really interesting about your specific sort of agency is that you are very, very niche down to LinkedIn advertising. I've spoken to a lot of different people who have sort of, they'll do digital marketing, SEO, and I think those are a little bit more broad because there's so much that you could do with SEO and digital marketing. Like, what does that actually entail? And I think LinkedIn advertising is very specific, like advertising on LinkedIn, which actually makes me wonder what brought you to this niche. Why did it become the most lucrative one? How did you end up focusing specifically on this?
Well, it was so interesting. I've always had a little bit of an attraction to entrepreneurship. I never really thought that I would be able to take the step out on my own. But, in earlier on in my career, I really fell in love with search engine optimization. And I would go to conferences and I would see people up on stage speaking. Rand Fishkin is the one who comes to mind. He did so great. He was speaking at every conference that I would attend. And I was like, I want to be him when I grow up. And the deeper I went into search engine optimization, SEO, and I started pitching conferences, and I realized I wasn't early enough into the industry. There were 100 people who were just as deep in expertise as I was. They were the ones who were going to get asked to speak. And I realized I probably wasn't going to have much of a platform. I was just going to be one voice in a sea of voices. And so as soon as I started seeing a lot of success using LinkedIn ads at this previous company, the light bulb went on for me, and I went, oh, this is a niche that no one cares about. No one is serving. Hardly anyone knows about. There's a real opportunity that I could go and become the world's expert at this one thing, even if this thing is very niche, very narrow. If it could still support my family, it might be worth pursuing. And it turned out it was.
Amazing. Yeah. I was talking to a guest in another episode about how we were talking about AI and how AI is sort of taking over jobs and stuff like that and people's concerns. And when I asked her, like, what do you think people should do to sort of preserve their jobs, all these people that are concerned that, they're going to be replaced by AI, and she said, you need to like become an expert on this really niche thing. And it's literally what you just described, like you were in this like very, very niche down thing of like LinkedIn ads. Like that's so specific. But it's true because you are the expert on something that a lot of people know SEO. A lot of people know, search engines. A lot of people know paid ads, but not everybody knows about how to do that on LinkedIn. Um, so it totally makes sense.
Totally worked. I agree. I've heard this phrase, the riches are in the niches before. And it can be kind of surprising because someone would go, well, I don't want to specialize around something that not a lot of people know about or not a lot of people use. But it was, if I would have just gone and started just another SEO agency or just another digital marketing agency, it would have taken me so long to gain a foothold in a market and to become well known. But as soon as I became the only one who was talking about LinkedIn ads for 10 years, it was so easy. People would go, oh, AJ Wilcox, he's the LinkedIn ads guy. And so even though the market wasn't huge, I was able to become well known and associated with it very quickly. And I think that's the best thing when you're first starting a business is get people to associate you with your expertise.
I think as long as you are like there is a market, even if that market might not be very obvious, you're setting yourself up for success because people are gonna wanna know about it, right? So
Yeah,
when they do, that's when it's like, okay, they're gonna find you, they're not gonna find Jennifer or whoever.
exactly. And you can be, even if it takes several years for this to become a big deal, if you're really confident that your niche is going to become uh, a, a big deal, um, you can be creating content for years. You can be the one who's written the book on it, the one who's
Yeah.
created the courses around it, the one who has a podcast on it. So it gives you a lot of time to build up a defensible position where no one else can push you over.
But that's how a lot of, like, these bigger things have been built, like, with pioneering things that at the moment didn't make sense. Like, I think when I think of influencer culture now, and how it started with just random people making YouTube videos at the beginning of YouTube, and it was just, like, compilation videos of funny house videos of people and, like, babies falling, and that's what we were watching, and it's evolved into this money-making machine, right? And now we have even more platforms. If I think about things like Amazon, that was just this, like, e-commerce website for books, and, like, it's huge now as the biggest e-com platform, I think. And so, like, it's like they a lot of these bigger sort of game-changing things, if you're doing them when nobody's doing them, it's also giving you leverage because one day it might become more popular or more famous, and then you'll be there, like, at the forefront. You won't be competing with a bunch of more players.
Amen. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and actually, I wanted to ask you about what challenges were you actually facing when you started doing this? I think whilst it's great to start something that's niche and, not a lot of people are familiar with, it can also bring forth a lot of problems because a lot of people are gonna think that they don't need it. You're not gonna find a lot of people that are gonna help you with it. Like I wonder what your challenges were. How did you make this actually profitable for yourself, and continue to grow it for 10 years that you've been doing it?
Yeah, I think when I very first started, um, I knew that I wanted to start a business that helped people with LinkedIn advertising because that was my skill. What I maybe it didn't like maybe it didn't make itself manifest to me, but owning a company is a lot more than just providing your service. I realized, oh, well, now I have to go and be a sales guy and
Yeah,
sell my service, and I have
for
to be a
people.
marketer. Right. I have to do my own accounting and finance. And then as I hire members of my team, now I have to be a manager and a mentor.
HR.
Yeah. So that was one of the biggest challenges I faced is like, oh, now I have to wear 7 different hats and all of these things take time. How do I balance them? So I'm selling enough to get a pipeline built so that I can have enough clients. And then when one of those leaves, I have someone else to replace them. So that was probably my biggest challenge.
Yeah, I know. I actually talk to a lot of business owners who tell me that has always been the biggest challenge, which is just kinda like learning how to balance it all. Another thing that I've heard is actually giving control when you actually start getting
Mhm.
teams. I think I've heard people struggle with that because it's like your baby and you don't want to let it go. And you know, you
Yes.
you think that, or you want to believe that you have the say all, do all for everything. And I think for a lot of people it's really hard to sort of say like, okay, no, you can make this decision.
It's true. Yeah, if I'm really good at so many of the things that I do, and when I hire someone to do them, I realize they're probably only going to be able to do it maybe 80% of the way that I would do it. And that decision, I would say it probably happened like a year or two into business because I held on to that baby for so long.
Yeah.
Eventually, when I said, I am okay with someone doing it 80% as well as I could have, and sending that to the client. I'm okay with that. I don't need to look at it and review it and correct it. Um, One of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, and I made it with how we do work with our clients. I made it for handling sales in the company. I've done it with you know handing any task that I've ended up handing it to
Yeah.
another employee. I've had to give away that baby, and honestly, it's gotten easier over time. But that first 2 or 3 times you do it, it's a really difficult decision.
Yeah, because I guess when it's like personal to you, you know, I think it's different when it's not your job. Well, I guess when it's just a job that you're doing for someone else and it benefits you into like you're just doing it for doing it. And then when it's something that you have poured your heart and soul into, of course, it would be a lot harder to let go. Which
So true.
I also have heard that scaling is really difficult, right? So this is also something that happens in the process of scaling. I've talked to someone who told me that they were selling a product, e-commerce, and the product ended up doing so well that they wanted to set up like an actual store, which, you know, that was like they were scaling really big and it was super hard because they thought they had figured it out, but they had figured it out, like, how to sell through Instagram. They hadn't
Yeah.
actually taken that leap to now moving it from a social media platform to an actual store, and then the store is, like, a whole 'nother world, and then, like, I remember she told me, like, I had to learn it was like I was starting from scratch because she went from one thing to, like, this other thing, and how to sort of have these 2 things coexist. In your case, was that something that you had to struggle with? Were you prepared for it? Or do you think that it was a pretty easy, you know, smooth ride?
Oh, not smooth at all. This is one of the hardest things I've had to deal with. Um, what I did when I very first started, I realized I needed help, but I couldn't afford someone full time. And I went, oh, I have a good relationship with the university I went to. What if instead of hiring one full time person, I hire 2 interns that are part time? Amazing, right? And what I found was everything was fine. I now had to train 2 people rather than one, but it was working fine until midterm exams and final exams came up. And then that was twice per semester when my employees vanished and I was left with everything in my own lap again, as if I didn't have any help. So that was like challenge number one. And because of that, I started hiring full time employees who I knew weren't going to desert me, several times a year. But then I got into this like, hey, having 1 or 2 people work for me and we work together, that's working well. Let's scale up to the point where I now have directors underneath me who are managing the account managers and they're managing advertising accounts. And as I kept scaling that direction, profit kept going down, client churn kept going up, and this doesn't make me look very good, but honestly, I've gotten to a point where I don't know what to do to scale because I tried that, ended up to the point where the organization got so bloated and clients weren't receiving the value that I ended up having to lay off about half the team and go back to where I'm handling so much of the client communication. I'm now the point of contact and I have the team supporting me. So I would sure love to figure that out to become a bigger agency. But for right now, I'm happy being small and, and just very extremely profitable.
That's great though. I mean, I think it's like a journey to figuring out what works for you. I think as long as you keep it sort of stable, I think that's already a feat in and of itself because I've spoken to a lot of business owners, and I think people who are aspiring business owners where their biggest concern is to make their business actually profitable. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like you see so many people who are juggling a 9 to 5 whilst they're trying to launch a business and they're not letting go of that 9 to 5 because they're scared that they're not gonna make ends meet, which is totally realistic. I mean, we're living in a really difficult economy. Um, it makes sense that you're married, you have children, you have responsibilities, you have rents to pay and bills to pay that you're gonna concern yourself with stuff like that. So I think the fact that you've been able to do that and also just sort of like reel it in is amazing because not everybody can do that. And I think it's a really big concern for aspiring business owners.
Oh, and to that point, I would say I am so jealous of someone who gets to work a 9 to 5 and then plan their side hustle and then turn it into a business and then gradually switch over. Because the reason I was free to start up this business is because I was part of a layoff and I didn't have that. I had ideas of like, hey, if I ever wanted to do my own thing, this might be what it is. But so jealous of someone who is able to still like handle that. I know it has its own challenges, but if you're in that position, you're building something up right now while you're fully employed. I'm so proud of you. Like, keep that going. I'm jealous.
Yeah, oh my gosh, me too. 'Cause I feel like I've tried to do side hustles with like main jobs and it's exhausting. Like I am like, no, when you're working full time and you have a lot of stuff, it's like you're overwhelmed with your normal job and then you have these other things and like I feel like it's like the last thing I want to do at 6 p.m. when I just got out of the office is go to another job. So, like thinking that someone is doing that is really commendable because I can't do that.
That's a
Yeah.
hustle for someone who is very young and maybe doesn't have a fully fleshed out family yet.
Yeah,
No,
I just
can't
can't like
imagine doing it now.
yeah. It's like a hustle for someone who just like wants like has a goal in mind, you
Yes.
know? Yeah. And now I also wanted to ask you now more in terms of like the actual advertising and what your agency is doing and all of that. LinkedIn ads are used in what industry mostly would you say they're more lucrative, they're more successful, or do you think that it really can be used in any situation and it just depends on how you do it?
Oh, it's such a good question. Uh, LinkedIn is unique because it lets you target your ads by who someone is professionally. And this lends itself most to business companies because most B2B companies you talk to, they'll say, "Oh, we make a product or a service or something for a very specific kind of person, and we can't buy a billboard to announce it to everyone because only half of a percent of the people who pass by that billboard are part of our target audience." So that's what makes LinkedIn so amazing is LinkedIn really has a monopoly on our business data, making it really good to target. The big challenge that we have is that LinkedIn has always been expensive for advertising. If you compare it to Google, especially if you compare it to Meta on a cost per click basis, it's probably 2 to 3 times more expensive to advertise on LinkedIn. So what I've decided is if you can define who your ideal target audience is by who they are professionally, and there's no other way to do it, then I think LinkedIn is great. But just realize you also want to make sure that the lifetime value of earning a customer is sizable to be able to pay for uh, the advertising that we pay a premium for up front. To put an actual number to that, I've said if you have a lifetime value of $10,000 or more from your product or service, whatever industry, then LinkedIn ads is probably a no-brainer. It's likely going to work if you do it right. But if you don't have that kind of lifetime value, maybe LinkedIn ads is going to be too expensive.
Yeah, like pricing is always huge. And I wonder how do you feel about um in terms of I guess comparing it to other platforms aside from things like pricing, um audience wise, do you think that LinkedIn is better or has a more responsive audience than you would in say Google ads or if you go to social media platforms? nowadays, or do you think that it's pretty much the same? Because LinkedIn is so different from other platforms where, like, I think LinkedIn is very much focused on the corporate and job life, right?
Yes. That is one thing that's really nice about running LinkedIn ads is if your ad shows up on LinkedIn, you know something about that user. You know they're probably thinking about their job and their career, and it puts them in this great mindset. So when they see your ad that's telling them how to do something better in their career, they're ready for it. So all else held equal, if they say the same ad on Facebook as they do on LinkedIn, I think we're going to have a higher conversion rate and a better conversion. I'll say conversion rate on LinkedIn. The difference then is like between social platforms, yeah, LinkedIn is going to win. But what if you start comparing it to search platforms like Google Ads and Microsoft Ads? There's a big difference. When someone is searching for something actively uh, on a search engine and your ad pops up, they've showed by their query what it is they're looking for, and they're ready to take some kind of an action. Like it might be ready to buy or talk to your sales rep. But on social media, we've kind of flipped the script a little bit. We're advertising to people by who they are because we know their pain points, but not what it is that they're looking for right now. And that means that our lead quality, as a sales team would call it, should be higher from LinkedIn because we're getting more of the right people. But their intent is lower. They're not ready to talk to your sales rep yet. And so we have to do a little bit more educating through ads, and the sales cycle becomes longer. But that's why I think search platforms like Google Ads and LinkedIn ads work so well together, because they really specialize at different areas of the sales funnel, and they work really well together.
Do you have businesses who use LinkedIn ads for things like lead generation? Um, or do you think that it's more focused on, I guess, connections and partnerships?
Yeah, definitely more for lead generation. What I tell people, and I don't know if this is going to make sense to everyone who's listening, but the traffic from LinkedIn, it acts like a top of funnel. The traffic acts top of funnel, but we pay for it like it's bottom of funnel. So I, I like to assume that everyone who's seeing one of my LinkedIn ads is someone who's never heard of my brand before, and I'm just introducing it to them. But then I can use all the retargeting. LinkedIn has this amazing set of features where I can define exactly if someone has done this, now show them a different ad. They're now in the middle of my funnel, or they're now in the bottom of my funnel, and I can change what I'm asking them for. When someone's in the bottom of my funnel, I know that they've had at least 2 strong interactions with my brand, and it's a lot more appropriate to show them an ad that says, "Hey, you look ready. Hop on the phone with a sales rep and like, let's talk through this."
I assume that like headhunting, I know that like because a lot of people are on LinkedIn to look for jobs. I'm assuming that a lot of LinkedIn ads are really good for that too, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of the spend on LinkedIn ads goes to B2B products and services. But LinkedIn was really founded on recruiting, headhunting, job searching. And so we find that anytime that we run ads around someone's career, new jobs, they always perform extremely well. But I would say, it's probably like 10% recruiting, 90% B2B products and services.
That's so interesting because I would have thought that recruiting was, like, really big and, like, the biggest thing. Because I feel like when I think of LinkedIn, that's what I think of the most.
Yeah.
And since I've been on LinkedIn, I think I always get recruiting ads, even if I'm not actively looking for a job, even if I haven't searched, like, jobs in my city or whatever, like, I'll just get like, "Oh, we think you would like this position." And I'm like, "Wow."
This is great news. It means you're highly in demand. That's an amazing place to be in your career.
Well, that's great. Know that, yeah, apparently, because I'm always getting, like, these suggestions, and I always felt like I was like, "Man, like, LinkedIn really invests in, like, the recruiting ads." And I
It's
didn't
true.
know that B2B was so big through LinkedIn ads. It was, like, news to me.
Oh yeah. As soon as you list yourself as having like a manager and above seniority at a company with more than 50 employees, chances are that's the stuff you're going to get is very targeted. Here are systems and processes and platforms that you could use to make your job better.
That makes a lot of sense. I also wonder if specifically SaaS companies do really well there. I think like for SaaS companies, there's always like the sort of messaging issue or communication issue because it's very niche. And a lot of times, a SaaS company is most likely going to be used in B2B surface worlds, right? So um, I'm guessing LinkedIn would be really great for that specific world. I had no idea because I mean, I guess like you said, like LinkedIn ads is so niche down that I had never really given it much thought. I just would get like the recruiting ads and I'd just be like, oh yeah, LinkedIn ad.
Yep. I would say probably at this point, 60% of our clients are SaaS software. So I can tell you SaaS has its own unique challenges with it, but definitely it's a great fit for LinkedIn ads.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I could totally imagine that. Now do have one last question, which is I just want to know about a real world real world example. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I was saying. Where you shared or you did something with a client and you achieved significant results through LinkedIn ads so that anybody that's listening can be inspired to maybe try that out.
Yeah, for sure. I will say probably 90% of the clients that we've worked with historically, we've worked with over 1,000 companies at this point, and probably 90% of them have this idea of I want to define my audiences on LinkedIn. That's why we're coming here. But I just want leads. I don't want to mess with having to educate them and take all of that time and extra expense. I'm just going to ask them directly, like, hey, get on a call with a sales rep. And what we find is when we do that, about 99% of the time, it doesn't work. People will click on your ads because they're curious, but as soon as you're asking them, like, get on the phone with someone that you don't know, they go, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. And so they end up seeing really high costs. So what we did, this is a client in the, trying to think of the space. This is a client in the healthcare space. They, what we started doing is setting up a 3-stage funnel. And this has now been several years ago, but we had this hypothesis that, okay, if someone is not ready to talk to our sales team yet, it means we probably are going to want several touches with them. So we set up a 3-stage funnel where the very first touch was just them seeing, actually video ads work really well here. It's just someone from our company sharing quick value, a tip, a trick, strategy, an industry update that you should know about. And then when someone has watched at least 50% of one of those videos, now we take them to the next step. And the next step is something like a document or come read a blog post or, here's more free information. Then as soon as they interact with that, then they go down to an ad that would basically say like, hey, let's talk. And what we found is that we went from having hardly any leads and it was like a $2,000 cost per lead, which was just insane. Like, I don't think people are going to keep budgeting for that. Once we worked them through 3 stages, we found that their conversion rate at the bottom stage was 5 times higher than any other stage. And
That's
we
so high.
realized, and now we're getting leads like appointments with sales reps for less than $150, which is great. And they have a lifetime value of $10,000 or more. So you can see how much of a return on investment they can get if their leads are $150 a piece. And they're all highly qualified because we got them directly from LinkedIn. So that would be my best advice to anyone who's considering LinkedIn. Be prepared for like a 3-stage funnel. Give them multiple educational things and have a kind of a soft entrance, because that's going to win people over. In order for someone to get on a call with a sales rep, they have to know, like, and trust your brand before you even ask. So figure out what are those assets that you can show people to get them to know, like, and trust you.
That makes sense because I think of myself like on the internet, just like as a person with if I'm interacting with an ad, the last thing I'm gonna do is want to talk to somebody when I'm if I'm interested in whatever I'm seeing through the advertisement, regardless of the platform, I would probably want to get on a call if I've like really, really become interested in the
Yes.
service or product. Then I could consider like, okay, fine, I'll talk to.
Yeah. You like everyone else, you're probably going to do 70% of your research before ever contacting the company. You're going to
Yeah.
Google them. You're going to look around their website. You're going to look at review sites. I think that's something we need to understand as advertisers, that's okay. There's actually a really cool effect that we see anytime we're running LinkedIn ads. We'll see what we tell our clients to do is on the forms on their website where people are submitting to book a sales meeting. We'll tell them, make sure to include a field there of how did you hear about us? And what's so interesting is they, even by running ads, they start getting leads coming from their website that say they came from Google, they say they came from Bing, but in the box, they'll say they heard about us on LinkedIn. And what's so amazing about that is our ad showed up on their screen. They went to Googled the name of the website and converted there. They probably didn't even charge us for that click. They went around. I'm a huge fan of anytime someone is willing to convert without clicking on the ad.
Yeah. No, and I think like as consumers get smarter and more, I guess, curious, that's a lot more likely to happen, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, AJ, it's been great having you. Our time is up, but before we finish this, I do want to give you the space to plug anything that you want to plug or tell us if anything that you said today resonated with anyone who's listening. If anybody's interested in working with you, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, if you go onto LinkedIn, just search for my name, AJ Wilcox. You can follow me or connect with me there. And I'm constantly sharing tips and tricks. That's where I give all of my free education. Also, our website, B2Linked.com. If you're curious, you want an audit or a free quote or anything like that about what it would be like to work with us, go there, fill out the form on any of the pages, and we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Yeah. And I will be adding the links to all of this in the description of the video so that people watching the video can go and just click. And for the listeners, go to the video and you will be able to find those links. Thank you so much for doing this, AJ, and everyone else. I will see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.